What's going on, you guys? Welcome back to the Neighborhood Podcast. One of the hosts of the podcast, my name is Kyle Dabro, and in today's segment, we're going to go over our preview for the upcoming MLB season. So, as of today, the MLB season will have started. And Kev, obviously, when we look back to last year, the Houston Astros were the World Series champions. They look to bring that same type of success going into this regular season. I know that Kev has some feelings about that since they swept his Yankees in the ALCS, but nonetheless, it is a new season for a whole crop of teams to pursue a World Series championship this year. So, Kev, I will kick this one to you. What are your expectations for the upcoming MLB season, which starts today?
I'm just happy baseball's back. Let's be honest. It has been far too long, and I have gone way too long without my Yankees. And obviously, everybody knows I'm riding with the boys for the chase for 28. It begins today. Opening day is here. Spring training is over, thankfully, for the traffic to get the hell out of my neighborhood. But in general, baseball being America's pastime, baseball being probably the longest sport throughout the entire year, it's just good to have it back because I know that I enjoy sitting down watching a good baseball game, whether that's behind the TV or whether that's at the actual ballpark. I'm hoping to get to a Yankees-Rays game this year up in Tampa, so we'll kind of play that one by ear. But in terms of the excitement I have, guys, every single year we talk about this team may win or that team may win or this team made incredible offseason transactions, but it looks like it's going to be relatively similar to what we had last year in terms of playoff teams and expectations because powerhouse teams did make more moves. The Yankees re-signed Judge. Obviously, the Phillies go out and they sign Trey Turner. Then you got to talk about the Mets, and they went out and they signed Verlander, although they did lose DeGrom. I would say that could be a potential upgrade, even though Justin Verlander is significantly older. But again, it really depends on who you ask. The Dodgers are always a team to monitor and pay attention to. Obviously, the Cardinals and the Braves and so many other people. I mean, younger teams like the Mariners made a good run last year. People are going in and saying that the Padres are going to have a resurgent year because they flopped so hard last year. And I'm really kind of focused on just seeing how those playoff teams can bounce back from last year. And I mean, unfortunately, the Houston Astros did win the World Series, blah, 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 whatever. But I mean, they're still an incredible team that needs to be monitored on a frequent and regular basis, just because, I mean, for the most part, that core is still pretty much together outside of Justin Verlander leaving. And when you really go and you look at it, with Altuve and Bregman and the list of other players on that squad, this is a team that potentially can go back to back. So you need to pay attention to those teams. You need to be monitoring some of the lower marketed teams, like I said, like the Mariners, like the Blue Jays who are up and coming, like the Tampa Bay Rays who have consistently been in the playoffs the last couple of years. These are not teams that you can ignore any longer. They may be a smaller marketed team. They may not have the most experience. They may not have the most payroll, but for sure, this season is going to be exciting, and I just cannot wait for first pitch to kick off tomorrow and get the MLB season started.
Kev, I'm with you 100%. I think when it comes to some general ideas about how I think the season's going to play out, just with some of the teams that I think are going to do really well, it's pretty much similar to what you just outlined. I think teams like, let's say, the Astros, the Yankees are going to be competitive in the American League. I think the teams in the AL East, that AL East, when you look at it from this past season, it was pretty stacked. Obviously the Yankees won the division. But then there are other teams that you have to consider, like the Rays as well. I think they'll also make a pretty impressive showing this upcoming season as well. But overall, I think, if I were to look at some of the interesting storylines that are going to take place this year, Kev alluded to one of them is what's going to happen with Trey Turner in Philadelphia. Obviously, when it comes to Trey Turner, I think when it comes to players that are coming in on an absolute hot streak into the season, it's definitely him. Because if you saw him in the World Baseball Classic when he was playing for Team USA, he was by far and away one of the best players that the United States had to offer in that tournament. And not only that, when you look at him, signed a massive, I think it was like an 11-year deal, upwards of over $300 million. It's a huge investment that Philly is putting with Trey Turner at the helm alongside Bryce Harper. And I think if you have that dynamic duo between the two of those guys, if they're able to consistently bring runs in for the Phillies, I think they're definitely going to be a team to contend with in the NL. Not only that, just to keep it within the NL, I got to look to the Dodgers. The Dodgers were by far and away the best team in the regular season last year, and then they fell tremendously short. It was astonishingly bad how they finished by losing in the first round of the playoffs, which was extremely unfortunate for them because going into the playoffs, it looked like they were going to have pretty much a straight shot to the World Series. And when they fell short, that was quite a surprise to me. So I think when it comes to the Dodgers, I think the Dodgers are going to try to learn from their mistakes. They still have a pretty solid core to work with. You still have Mookie Betts. You still have Freddie Freeman. Obviously, you lost Trey Turner, but we'll see where it goes from here. And obviously, I think the Dodgers are going to be one of those teams that are going to be looking to get some vengeance for how last year ended in their mind. And then I think just to really kind of kick it back to the AL, I think the team that's probably going to be the team to beat right now, it's probably going to be the Houston Astros. Kev knows full well what the Houston Astros are capable of. They unfortunately swept his New York Yankees in the ALCS last year. I still believe they are probably the top team to contend with, not only in the AL, but I would say the MLB to a larger extent, simply just because from top to bottom, when you look at their hitting, when you look at their pitching, and their overall defensive presence in the field, not a lot of teams are going to be able to contend with that. And there's a very good chance that Altuve can lead this core once again deep into the playoffs. They could potentially go back to another World Series this year. I'm not going to rule that out entirely, but I imagine teams like the Yankees are going to have something to say, especially with how unfortunate it ended for them this past season with them losing in the ALCS. But overall, I think it's going to be a very exciting year. I'm very interested to see how these teams get off to a decent start. I mean, obviously, baseball season, it is not a sprint. It is a marathon. You got 162 games to go. And honestly, it will just be very interesting to see who gets an early start, depending on whether it's a hot start for some teams or it's a bad start for some teams. But, I mean, to me, it's not really how you start, it's how you finish. But overall, I'm very excited with how the season is shaping up. And hopefully, it turns out to be a good one.